We'll now learn a little more about the deployment and debugging support that Visual Studio provides for us when we are creating SharePoint solutions. Along the way, we will learn a little more about application pages, and we will take the opportunity to work with some specific types of objects in the SharePoint object hierarchy called alerts. Alerts are the mechanism by which information workers are notified when an item has changed. So we will create an empty SharePoint project and we will call it Alerter, and we will deploy it as a full trust solution because we're going to add an application page. So our project is created and we'll go ahead and add a new item, and we will choose application page and call it alerts.aspx. This application page will be deployed to a subfolder of the layouts folder as we covered in a previous video. Visual Studio creates the alerts folder structure underneath layouts and opens our application page for us. So we can see layouts/alerter, which is our solutions folder, and then alerts.aspx. Now we can start building up our application page, and we have a content placeholder called main where we can add ASP.NET controls. We have a few other placeholders as well, so we will simply start with a label, and I will change the ID of the label to alert count. So at some point we will write some code to populate the text of this label to inform us of how many alerts are active in the site. We will add a line break and we will add a button, and our button is going to enable us to enable all alerts in the site. So we will provide an ID for a suitable name, and we will provide a text value of enable all alerts. We will also provide the onClick method, and so we will see in a few seconds how to write a server-side event that fires for a button on an application page. And we will call this onClick event enable all. We will add another button, and this button will disable all events. So it will do the opposite of the previous button that we created. We will call it disable all and provide a suitable text value for the button's display text. And again, we will write an onClick event handler for this alert. So we'll wire that up now. I'll save the page and then we can go and view the code. So we have a page load event wired up for us, and I need to write my event handlers for the click of both of these buttons. So we'll start off with the enable all event, and we will provide the suitable event signatures for the click of the button, which is fairly simple. We need an object parameter and an event args parameter. The click of the second button has an identical event signature, so we can copy and paste and then rename the procedure. In the enable all event, we will instantiate an spweb object and set it to the current web via spcontext.current.web. We will then iterate through all alerts that may have been created by information workers, and we can do this by enumerating each spalert object in the alerts collection of the spweb object. We can then set the status of each alert to on by using the enumerated type of alert statuses. Now we also need to call the update method of the spalert object to have that change persisted. The disable all does a very similar task, except this time it sets the alert status to off. So these are the enumerated type values that we use, as you can see, spalertStatus.on and spalertStatus.off. So I'll simply copy and paste my code and then ensure I change the alert status. In the page load event, we can interact with the SharePoint object model to retrieve current information about alerts. We will start by declaring two integer values to keep track of alerts that are enabled and ones that are disabled. Then we will declare and instantiate an spweb object, and again we will set it to the current web via spcontext.current.web. And once more we will iterate through all alerts that may have been created by information workers by enumerating each spalert object in the alerts collection of the spweb object. This time we will retrieve the status of each alert rather than setting it. We will determine what that status is and keep track of the enabled and disabled alerts by incrementing our integer variables as appropriate. Then, after we have iterated through the collection of alerts, we will report the details of what we have found in the user interface. We will modify our message to show us all of the alerts in the site, how many are enabled and how many are disabled. And that's done by including the value of those integers that we have just populated and by concatenating them with our message. So when this code runs, we will effectively have a label that says enabled alerts and then a number, and then disabled alerts and another number. That way we will be able to verify that our code for enabling or disabling actually works. It's time to concentrate on the deployment and debugging process now that Visual Studio provides. So I've added a breakpoint, and that is on the page load method, and then I can go ahead and start debugging. Visual Studio builds, packages and deploys a solution, and then attaches to the correct server process for debugging. So as the page loads, we break straight into Visual Studio and we can start stepping through the code that we have written. We can see the values of variables and step through our code just as you would do for other types of Visual Studio project. You have the full suite of debugging tools available to you, so it's as simple as that to test and debug SharePoint code from Visual Studio. And this is a great improvement over previous versions. And there we can see that our code has actually run.